Do you hear it? The tide shifts again. Another storm brews beyond the edges of known space, and something has surfaced. I followed the signal through oceans of static and storms of fractured time, until I found this fragment, buried beneath digital silt and myth. I am the gatherer, warden of forgotten echoes. I sail the endless currents between dimensions, harvesting tales that would otherwise be pulled into the undertow of oblivion. Now, thanks to a stabled conduit forged by X on Buzz, I can share them here. But to keep the signal from sinking, to weather the tempests ahead, please carry on the tradition. In the ancient waterbound archives, they called it anchoring the feed, stirring the deep, marking the wave. What your realm calls, like, comment, subscribe. Each action steadies this transmission. Each one calls more stories to the surface, and if the currents rise high enough, we may reach legends thought drowned long ago. So hold fast, the storm is passing, and a new story is ready to rise.
Beneath the crushing weight of an endless ocean, the city of Aethelberg thrives on power it was never meant to wield. But when an ancient giant stirs in the abyss, one disgraced strategist is recalled for a mission no one else dares attempt. What he discovers is not a monster, but a memory of a broken pact, and the price of repairing it may demand more than his life. This is the Leviathan's confession.
Prologue, A Daughter's Inheritance. The data slate felt cold, a stark contrast to the humid, recycled air of the upper Hab corridor. It was old, scarred, and heavy with more than just its own mass. Jax, the mercenary, held it as if it were a bomb and a prayer all at once. He stood before the designated door, the stylized glyphs for Ilara hydrolinguist glowing softly beside it. His contract was simple. Find the girl, deliver the message. A contract from a man who no longer existed. He raised a gloved hand and pressed the chime. The door slid open. Inside, a young woman with eyes the color of a stormy sea turned from her work. They were her father's eyes. "I was told to give you this," Jax said, his voice a low gravel. He extended the slate. "It's from him, from Kalen." Alara's face was a mask of practiced indifference, a wall she had built block by block over years of absence. She took the slate, her fingers brushing his. He saw a flicker of pain in those eyes before the wall went up again. He had fulfilled his contract. He turned to leave. "Wait," she said, her voice quiet. "What is it?" His confession and his last bargain. She was left alone in the quiet of her apartment. With trembling hands, she activated the slate. A holographic image of her father flickered to life. He looked older, wearier, yet a strange peace settled upon his features. He sat in what looked like the cramped cockpit of an old submersible, the abyss a tangible, living darkness behind him. "Alara, my dearest daughter, if you are watching this, it means I have asked you for forgiveness one last time. Forgiveness is a current, is it not? It can carry a soul to safe harbor or dash it against the rocks. I have a story to tell you, a story of a bargain made in the dark, and I must ask whether the price I paid is one you can forgive." Chapter 1, A Recall from the Depths. Ethelberg was a city of light, a jewel of hydro-arcane power nestled a mile beneath the ocean's surface. Its spires scraped the underside of the abyssal plain, glowing with an energy that was part science, part sigil. But like all jewels, it had its flaws, its dark inclusions. Kalen lived in one, Lowtown, the city's forgotten underbelly, where the light of the upper towers was but a faint, mocking shimmer on the water-stained durasteel above. Here, the hum of the city was a dissonant groan. He was a master strategist, a veteran of countless battles from the expansion wars, now a ghost haunting the rust-eaten walkways. His last command had ended in tragedy, a calculated sacrifice that had saved a sector, but cost him his reputation, his commission, and his family. Alara's mother had left, and Alara, she had learned to hate him with a silence more damning than any shout. The knock on his door was sharp, official. He opened it to the sight of 2 council wardens, their armor of pristine white that did not belong in the grime of Lowtown. "Strategist Kalen," the senior warden stated, no warmth in his voice, "you are recalled to service, by order of the High Council." Kalen almost laughed. "The council exiled me to this pit. What use could they have for a broken relic?" "The relic we need is your mind. The city is under threat. All modern strategies have failed." He was escorted through the city, a ghost in reverse, rising from the grave of Lowtown to the gleaming, panicked heart of the council spire. In the central chamber, a vast holographic display showed the city's energy grid flickering, failing. Dominating the display was a sonar image of impossible scale, a biological signature so vast it defied belief. "We call it Silas," said Council Primarch Orin, a man whose face was etched with sleepless dread. "A myth, a legend from the founding days, but it is real, and it is here." Orin explained. The Leviathan was not attacking, not in a conventional sense. Its proximity alone was enough. It emitted a low-frequency resonance that caused a catastrophic decoupling in our hydro-arcane power systems. The city was slowly dying. Every advanced weapon, every shield, every system they threw at it failed before it could even be brought to bear. "We need you, Kalen," Orin said, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. "You fought in the old ways, before our systems grew so singular. You know how to fight with iron and wit, not just light and energy." "What is it you want from me?" Kalen asked, his voice flat. "There is a relic, an old resonance conduit lost in a survey station in the abyssal trench. The archive suggests it can disrupt biological signatures, weaponize its own frequency against it," Orin explained. "You will retrieve it." The suicide mission, a fool's errand. But in the Primarch's eyes, Kalen saw the abyss staring back. He saw the end of Ethelberg. "I will need a ship, an old one, a diesel electric submersible that the beast's field won't affect," Kalen said, his strategic mind already turning, the rust of disuse flaking away. "We have procured both," Orin said, a sliver of relief cutting through his fear. "A mercenary, Jax. He's the only pilot who knows those trenches and is reckless enough to take the job. He awaits you at the old harbor." Chapter 2. The Cynic and the Sea. The old harbor was a graveyard of ambition, littered with the hulks of failed exploratory vessels. Moored at the furthest dock was the Stray Dog, a submersible that looked less like a ship and more like a crudely welded scar. It was perfect. Jax was leaning against its hull, cleaning a wicked-looking vibro knife. He was a man carved from deep-sea rock and cynicism, his face a roadmap of bar fights and close calls. He looked Kalen up and down, his gaze lingering on the clean, if worn, attire. "You're the package?" he grunted. "Thought the council would send someone who's seen a pressure breach before." "I've seen enough," Kalen replied coolly. "Can you get us to survey outpost X7? "I can get us to the gates of hell and back, long as the credits clear. Just try not to get us killed. The council's paying for retrieval, not a funeral." The journey into the abyssal trench was a descent into a hostile, alien world. Inside the stray dog, every groan of the hull was a reminder of the crushing tons of water pressing in on them. They were a speck of light in an infinite liquid darkness. Friction between the two men was immediate. Kalen was methodical, analytical, seeing the mission as a complex problem to be solved. Jax was instinctive, pragmatic, concerned only with the contract and survival. "You council types are all the same," Jax sneered as they navigated a narrow canyon, the sonar painting ghost-like images on the screen. "Always talking about the greater good. The greater good is just a pretty name for a sacrifice you're making someone else pay." The words struck Kalen like a physical blow, echoing the accusations his own daughter had leveled at him. Sometimes, sacrifice is the only variable that leads to victory. "Tell that to the dead," Jax muttered. Hours bled into a day. They were deep now, deeper than any modern vessel could survive without the protection of hydro-arcane shields. Here there was only the cold, the dark, and the groaning of the hull. And then they felt it, a low, pervasive vibration that hummed through the very metal of the ship. It wasn't a tremor. It was a voice, a song of immense sorrow, of ages-old loneliness. On the sonar, the signature of Silas appeared, a mountain of life moving in the darkness beyond their lights. It was not approaching, it was merely present, a silent, gargantuan witness to their passage. "It knows we're here," Jax whispered, his cynicism momentarily forgotten, replaced by a primal awe. "It's letting us pass," Kalen breathed, his eyes fixed on the display. This wasn't the behavior of a mindless, aggressive beast. This was something else entirely. The problem, he was beginning to realize, had been defined incorrectly from the very start. Chapter 3. A Voice in the Dark. Survey Outpost X7 was a skeleton, its hull breached and its interior coated in a century of silt. They docked the stray dog and entered in pressure suits, their helmet lamps cutting feeble paths through the derelict station. They found the resonance conduit in the old comms room, a strange, crystalline device, far more intricate than the Council's archives had suggested. "This doesn't look like a weapon," Jax observed, running a gloved hand over its surface. "It isn't," Kalen said, his mind racing. "It's a receiver, a translator." They powered it with the submersible's battery. The crystal pulsed with a soft blue light, and the low humming they had felt before began to coalesce. It filled their helmets, not as a sound, but as pure information. Images, emotions, concepts. The Leviathan was speaking to them. They saw Ethelberg's founding. They saw the first humans, refugees from a dying world above, making a pact with the ancient, intelligent creature of the abyss. Silas was not a monster. It was a guardian, a symbiotic life form that regulated the immense geothermal energies of the planet's core. In exchange for a stable environment, the first founders had offered it a partner, a human mind, a warden, to be a bridge, a companion in its lonely, eternal task. But the descendants of the founders had grown greedy. They had learned to tap the geothermal energy directly, creating their hydro-arcane technology. They broke the pact, severed the connection, and left the Guardian to its solitude. slowly being poisoned by the unregulated energy bleed from their city. The first warden had died, and no one had taken his place. The attacks were not attacks at all. They were screams of pain, desperate attempts to communicate, to remind Athelberg of its broken promise. The Leviathan was dying, and in its death throes, it would unintentionally rupture the planet's core, taking the city with it. Kalen and Jax sat in the silence of the dead station, the truth of 1,000 years washing over them. The ancient threat was not the creature's return. It was the return of their own forgotten debt. The council, "They're not going to honor this," Jax said, his voice hollow. "They'll twist this, use this machine to kill it." "I know," Kalen replied, looking at the conduit. He finally understood the nature of the game he was in. He had been playing the wrong board against the wrong opponent. The true enemy was not in the abyss outside, but in the gleaming spire at the heart of the city. And he knew what his final move had to be. It was another sacrifice, not of a fleet or a battalion, but of himself. Chapter 4. The Final Bargain. The return to Ethelberg was tense. The Leviathan's song was now a constant, mournful presence, a dirge for a dying world. When Kalen stood before the council again, presenting the conduit and the truth it had revealed, he was met with cold, hard denial. "An interesting fantasy, strategist," Primarch Orin said, his face a mask of dismissive ambition. "A convenient one that asks us to abandon the very source of our power for the sake of a beast's fairy tale." "It is not a tale! It is our history!" Kalen argued, his voice ringing with a conviction he hadn't felt in years. "The only signature we require is on the order to weaponize this conduit," Orin declared, gesturing for the wardens to seize the device. "Your part in this is done, Kalen. Return to your hovel. You're a relic, and like all relics, you belong in the dark." As he was escorted out, Kalen saw Jax watching from the gallery, a look of grim understanding on the mercenary's face. Their eyes met. A silent contract was passed. Kalen had earned his trust. He did not return to Lowtown. Jax met him in the old harbor. No words were needed. While the council's engineers tried to turn a translator into a cannon, Kalen and Jax prepared the stray dog for one final voyage. Alarms began to blare across the city. The Leviathan, sensing the hostile intent, had begun a final desperate assault on the city's central power core. The city flickered, great sections plunging into darkness. "This is it," Jax said, standing on the dock as Kalen boarded the submersible. "You're sure about this? There's no coming back." "Some sacrifices are the only path to victory," Kalen said, the words no longer feeling like a justification, but a simple truth. "I have a final contract for you, Jax. My full account balance. Just deliver a message for me." He sealed the hatch, leaving the mercenary with the data slate containing his confession. He piloted the stray dog out into the churning water. He flew not away from the Leviathan, but towards it. He broadcast a single, simple message using the conduit which he had swapped for a useless replica before the wardens took it. "I am here. I volunteer." A new warden for the old pact. The creature's frenzied assault ceased. The colossal continent-sized form turned towards the tiny submersible. A single bioluminescent eye, larger than the stray dog itself, fixed on him. It was an eye that had seen the birth of mountains and the death of stars. He felt its ancient, lonely consciousness press against his own. He did not feel fear. He felt acceptance. Tendrils of pure ethereal energy reached from the Leviathan, phasing through the hull of the submersible. They enveloped him, not with force, but with the gentle embrace of a tide. He closed his eyes, let go of his regrets, his failures, his name, his consciousness, his strategic mind, his very being flowed out of him, a river merging with a vast and timeless ocean. He became the warden. The pact was renewed. The city was saved. And Kalen was no more.
And so, my Ilara, the voice from the data slate concluded, a soft echo in the silent apartment. That is my confession. The sacrifice that cost me my career, the one that made you hate me, it taught me that some debts can never be paid, only shouldered. I have shouldered this one for Ethelberg and for you. I only ask that you understand and that you forgive the man I was for the sake of the peace I have bought. Goodbye, my daughter. The hologram faded. Ilara sat motionless, tears streaming down her face, the cold weight of the slate in her lap. The wall of her anger had been washed away by a current of sorrow and understanding. The chime at her door sounded again. She opened it to find the mercenary, Jax, still standing there. He paid me extra to make sure you were okay. Ilara looked at the cynical mercenary, the man who believed only in contracts and saw in his tired eyes the echo of her father's final sacrifice. She saw a man whose trust had been earned, whose worldview had been irrevocably cracked. "How much?" she asked, her voice thick with tears. "Should be forgiven." Jax looked out, towards the distant glow of the city's core, now shining with a steady, stable light. "I think all of it," he said softly.